Looks good. Figured I'd give you guys a quick little garden update this morning, although this is not a gardening channel. Strawberries are doing good. In fact, next year I think I will plant the peppers in a different raised bed and just have this entire one be for strawberries, because what I've learned is that you need quite a few strawberry plants to really make enough berries to actually like sit down and eat. Our sunflower is kind of drooping over. I think it's reached pretty much the end of its life cycle. It looked pretty good there for about a week or two, and now I'm just kind of waiting for the seeds to develop, and then I'll decide if I want to try to eat them. This pumpkin vine is our carving pumpkins, and you can see it's making a lot of gourds, but the vine itself doesn't really look all that great. I'm pretty sure there's a deficiency in the soil that we're seeing here, because it seems that everything that's planted directly into the ground and not in a raised bed is doing the same thing. All the interior leaves look dry and stressed, but the exterior leaves look all right. The tomatoes, I believe, are overcrowded. You know, when you plant these, you think they've got plenty of room, and then they get big like this, and it's like, yeah, this was not enough space for 4 plants. And over here at the giant pumpkin plants, it's the same thing. The exterior leaves look good, but the interior look a little stressed. Each vine is producing a pumpkin, although I think this one is gonna be the big one. Well, I say gonna be the big one, it is the big one, but it wasn't always that way. It used to be this one was the biggest one, and it's kind of slowed down. Cattle are very vocal with me this morning. This is a classic case of conditioning. When you move pastures as often as we do, they just kind of get in a habit of every time they see you, they think it's time to move, but they still have about 10 to 12 more hours left in this paddock. So I'm not gonna give in. Going down. Once Callie and I get done tending to this water, we've got a full day ahead of us. I don't know exactly what we're gonna do, but it's gonna be a full day. That's what's going on today on Farmer Tyler Ranch. I'm walking around in this paddock that will be the next pasture hay paddock, and I'm just kind of trying to come up with a rough plan as to when I'm going to cut it. And the more I think about it, the more it kind of dawns on me that cutting pasture hay, the same rules don't apply that would if you were cutting a field only for hay. For example, this paddock that I'm standing in has 14 days of recovery since the last graze, but you got to remember, at the last graze, they didn't pick it all down to the ground. I mean, look at all this Dallas grass here that's gone to seed. That wouldn't have happened in 14 days. This has been growing for longer than that, but the last time the cattle were in here, for whatever reason, they skipped that over. Fact is, everywhere you look out here, there's these tall patches of grass that have Dallas grass in them, but the reason that I think the cattle are leaving them alone is because every tall patch out here also has smut grass. So by avoiding the smut grass, they are also avoiding some Dallas grass and letting it mature. Now, if you'll look over here, you will see the other side of this coin, and that is any patches that don't have smut grass. You can tell the cattle have grazed it down low. And essentially what I'm starting to think is that in this paddock, they are both undergrazing and overgrazing at the same time. And as a result, I've got grass in this paddock in every stage. And for those that don't know, they talk about grass basically in 3 different stages. The first stage is when it's very short, the nutritive quality is at the highest, but the quantity is at the lowest. In the second stage, the grass is a little bit taller, but not quite at full maturity. this is the best balance of quantity and quality. And then the third stage, where the grass is fully mature and it has a developed seed head, this is where the quality of the grass, as far as the cattle are concerned, is the lowest, but the quantity is the highest. So what I'm saying is that out here I've got some stuff that's under mature, some stuff that's over mature, some stuff that's basically perfect. In my mind, that all averages out to tell me that there's enough quantity out here to go ahead and cut this whenever I'm ready. But there is one thing that I do need to wait on, and that is my irrigation cycle. I'm in the process of irrigating this right now, as a matter of fact. So I'll have to get the water over this and then give this at least a week to dry before I come out and cut it. In that week, that'll give this grass that's in the first stage some time to grow and hopefully get up into that second stage. And for those that are just joining, I'm cutting and baling this pasture in part to get the hay bales. I mean, it's nice to have some extra hay. But the main reason that I'm doing it is to clean up these pastures. And because of that, a lot of people have asked me if I still plan on making a weed wiper to take care of the smut grass. And my answer is that I'm not sure yet. I first want to see how well this works. You know, I mean, I know just by haying the pasture, I'm not getting rid of the smut grass like a weed wiper would, but if I can suppress it to a point to where it just stays at a manageable level, then I would rather do it that way rather than, you know, apply chemicals to the grass. And it's funny because you really don't hear a lot of people talk about doing this, except for you guys in the comments. A lot of you have said that you do this and it works great. I think the only YouTuber that I can think of that regularly cuts and bales their pasture is Pete at Just a Few Acres Farm. But most people just don't really do this. And I don't know if it's because they don't have the equipment or if it's just not a common practice. But when you think about it, it's really no different than the people that graze cattle and sheep together. So in that system, you run the cattle through first and then you chase them behind with the sheep, and the sheep are said to eat a lot of the stuff that the cattle leave behind. Well, basically that's what we're doing here. We're just not using sheep, we're using a disc mower. And full disclosure, I actually had considered getting sheep in order to do this. I figured I'd probably need about 20 or 30 ewes to chase the cattle, which would be great this time of year. And I say great with a grain of salt. But then I just got to thinking about, like, what am I going to do with them in the wintertime? Then I've got to feed them. And then the big nail in the coffin on that idea is that there's just really not much of a market for lambs in this area unless you're selling them as like 4-H or FFA projects. And really, to play that game, you got to have fancy genetics and all of the other things. So sheep for me just wasn't, I didn't think, a real viable option. I think that cutting and baling the pasture is going to work a lot better. But going back to the original question about the weed wiper, will I make one still? Well, if it ends up that I'm not happy with these results, then I will. But if this ends up working, I mean, why wouldn't you do it this way? Because when you run a weed wiper, you go out there, you spend time to apply herbicide to the target weeds, and then they die, and that's it. I mean, you get nice pasture when you're done. But by cutting and baling the pasture to fight the weeds, I also get the added benefit of extra hay. And if you can't tell, I am optimistic about cutting and baling the pasture to at least stomp down the smut grass a little bit. And let me run over to the paddock that I already cut and baled, and I'll show you why. Here we are in the paddock that I cut and baled. I think I got the bales off of here about a week ago, and since then I've irrigated this once, and as you can see, it looks absolutely beautiful. I look around out here, I see a ton of Dallas grass coming up everywhere. Clover is a little bit below that canopy, and then here and there you can find some spots of Bermuda. But what is the one thing that you don't see? Of course, I'm talking about the smut grass. Now, if we look at the paddock next door here, any sort of light tan colored grass that you see is smut grass. So that gives you a good idea as to what the density of smut grass was in this paddock prior to baling. Of course, the smut grass did not disappear. It is still out here, and if I look really hard, I can find a stalk of it here and there. So here's a clump of it right here, you can see. But also notice in this clump of smut grass, there's also Dallas grass growing up through it, and a little bit of clover down there as well. In full disclosure, I had to walk around for a little while to find that, and I ended up coming down here to the end of the field because this is where the smut grass pressure is by far the worst. If you look next door on this side and on that side, that's what this used to look like. Here's another little clump here, same thing. We've got a couple stalks with seed heads on them, and then a bunch of, like all this here is Dallas grass that's growing up in it. So what does all this mean? What conclusions can be drawn? Well, what it appears to mean is that the Dallas grass and the other desirable forage out here recovers a lot more quickly from an aggressive cut than does the smut grass. So my hope is that with proper timing of cutting and baling the pasture, that I can sort of increase or strengthen the population of Dallas grass and weaken the population of smut grass. And, you know, it'll probably take some time to find that balance to where this all works together in the way that I want it to, but I think we're onto something. And all of this has really got me thinking about next year. And the big question that I have, and I would like some feedback on this, and that is it better from a weed control standpoint? Would it be better to try to get a hay cutting off of every single acre of this pasture next year over the course of the entire summer? Or would it be better to just wire off like 3 or 4 acres or whatever size I decide I want to try to do, and then just take like 5 or 6, whatever the weather allows, consecutive hay cuttings off of that and essentially pull that out of the pasture rotation for that summer? I can see good and bad to doing it both ways, so I'm kind of curious what you guys think. All this talk about hay has got me thinking about my hay equipment, and if you remember this year when I was baling up the big field, I found that I had a pretty severe leak with this hydraulic cylinder here that lifts the tailgate on the baler. Obviously, I have not gotten this fixed yet, and I ran it like this to bale up the grass hay because I knew I wasn't gonna have very many bales. But if I'm gonna do the grass hay again and then hopefully do rice straw, I probably need to just go ahead and get this fixed. Got it. Where did my camera go? Sorry about that. One of the benefits to having everything doused in oil for the last several hours that I've run the baler is it seems to have loosened everything up, and with the exception of the bolts, things are coming apart pretty easily so far. And nut. Oh, I think we got it. We got it or we broke it. One of the two. Just either way it'll come off. So far so good, but we are going to hit that. Okay, so this piece is held by that pin. I got to say this out loud. I might have to go back and watch this video when I put things back together. So it looks like this pin's in a slotted hole, and I wonder if maybe if you pick the cylinder up, if then you can get it out. So that will work. Just have to figure out a way to hold it up here. Every time I pull the hydraulic cylinder rod out far enough to get the pin to come out, I have to pull from the pin so the pin gets bound in there, and then when I let go of it, the hydraulic pressure sucks that rod back in the cylinder. So I think if I detach the hydraulic hose that it will no longer do this, and I need to detach the hose anyway, so that's what we're going to do now. There it goes. There it goes. There it goes. There it goes. There we go. Full disclosure, I've never disassembled a John Deere cylinder before, but I think, judging by the looks of it, this end cap has got to twist off. There's a couple of holes like here and here. I'm sure there's a special tool to do this that I don't have, so we're gonna try to improvise. We'll start with least likely to work, but easiest if it does. It's just the glove slipping. Okay. We had to try. Well, I must be growing up because I decided that it would be better to actually get the proper tool to take this apart than to sit here and try some unorthodox methods that would very likely ultimately mess the cylinder up, or at the very least make it harder to put back together. What I need is a certain kind of spanner wrench, which is this, and I don't know if the GoPro will really show it that well, but this is what you call a square nose. It's wide and square, as you might imagine. What I need is a round nose spanner wrench that'll fit into those little holes, and then you can get a good grip on it. So I've already hopped on the internet and found the correct tool, so it should be here tomorrow, and I can wait that long. Now you might be asking yourself, is it really worth it to spend the money on a special tool like that to do one job? And I would say 100% yes, it is. Something that I've learned in my life is that when you need a tool once, you very often need it again, usually not in the too distant future. And as it turns out with this baler, I actually know that I've got another cylinder that needs to be rebuilt, and that is this one right here. You can see it's weeping and leaking, and it's starting to look a lot like that other one. So there's two jobs that I needed on already, and when I was looking in the parts manual for this baler to try and see if I could find a part number for a rebuild kit for the cylinder, wouldn't you know that all the numbers were highlighted, so obviously the previous owner has rebuilt this, I think it's this side before, because the side that I took apart, none of the paint was harmed, but I can see on these bolts that somebody's had this cylinder off before. So I could pretty safely assume that this is the kind of job that you just are going to have to do periodically on the baler. I mean, those lift cylinders on the tailgate, they get a lot of work. I don't know what keeps happening to these wires. I think the calves have realized when the back wire is not energized that they can touch it and go under it, and in doing that I think they're breaking it off of the post, because this one is just like the other one down there. The wire's not hooked up to hardly any of these posts, and I don't see the clips anywhere. Well, it's been about 6 weeks since I turned the bulls out here with the cows. It was the first part of July, like first day of July, that the boys got turned out, and I'm thinking about this year going with a 60-day breeding season, which would mean they've only got about 2 more weeks left out here. I didn't want to start talking right behind that cow and startle her. The plan is at the end of August to separate the bulls again, and at that point I think I'll put them in the little pasture, and I'll probably put an interior hot wire up in there just to be sure that they stay separated. So the boys will stay in the little field for September and October, but then sometime in November I'll want to wean the calves, and at that point I'll probably just put the bulls back out with the cows, because at that point there are no more heifer calves out here that might accidentally get bred, and any open cows that they might happen to come across would end up being so late calving that I'd probably just end up selling them next year anyway. I would just keep everybody separated, but where I'm going to be housing the bulls when they're by themselves is the same place where I need to wean the calves, so it just starts to become an issue of just not having enough different places to send everybody. By doing this tighter calving season, I know full well that there probably are a few cows that will not end up getting bred. You remember this year we had almost like a summer calving season with about, what was it, four cows, I think, that gave birth within a couple weeks of each other, but a lot later than they should have been. Speaking of which, there's one of them right there. And assuming those girls don't breed, then they will be culled out of the herd. The purpose behind this is to kind of isolate those genetics and get rid of them. Now the Bismarck bull, on the other hand, up there at the heifer pasture, I'm just gonna leave him where he's at. Cow number 49 up there does have that nice red heifer calf, so we're just gonna kind of take a gamble and assume that he won't get her bred. And I should state again for the record that for beef cattle at least, it's most common for them to reach reproductive maturity at around 12 to 14 months of age where they could get bred. Calves getting bred at 6 months or 7 months of age, while it's not impossible, as I have learned, it is very rare and really probably not something that is worth changing your whole program for. And because there's just one heifer calf up there, it feels like a reasonable risk to me. You know, you can try to do everything perfect, or you can do things the way that makes the most sense, and right now that just makes the most sense. Thanks for hanging out with me today, guys, and I hope I'll see you again on Farmer Tyler Ranch.